BBC. Let's talk to Jake Wallis Simons. He's author of Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred and what to do about it, and joins us now. Good morning to you.
Morning.
I have to say, I thought these scenes were utterly extraordinary at Glastonbury. We talked about it at great length yesterday. Now it's emerged that Tim Davie, the director of the BBC, was not only involved in some of the decision-making regarding the live, taking down the live stream of Bob Vylan after these death chants and other things were said on stage by the singer of that duo, but that he was actually at Glastonbury on the day. Does it look likely he's going to lose his job?
Yeah, I mean, far be it from me to speculate on whether Tim Davie was stoned at the time, but it seems difficult to explain.
OK. I think we can definitely say that we are not saying that 100%. A lot of people are at Glastonbury, a lot of people aren't. In no way is anyone suggesting Director General of the BBC was under the influence of drugs. Can we please not do that?
That was a joke.
I know, but still, for legal reasons, Jake, don't you get me in trouble.
I was just trying to make the point that the decision that he made, or the lack of decision, is totally inexplicable.
Yeah.
I mean, how can somebody like him, in his right mind, who's a very adept, leader of a massive organisation like the BBC, an institution like the BBC, fail to understand that having death chants performed at Glastonbury, then beamed into millions and millions of homes by the BBC, by a national broadcaster, legitimised and magnified and spread, could be okay in any planet, on any planet.
But even the decision, they made a decision after Keir Starmer said about, talking about Kneecap, and one member of Kneecap, the Irish rap duo, that they was in court and being charged with an offence of under terrorism, although other charges not brought, despite some really rather blatant video footage of some extraordinary support for Hamas and Hezbollah. The decision not to stream that live and play that live, so they acknowledged that, but then they decided the support act, Bob Vylan, that should be streamed live. That in itself was a poor decision, and the fact that there wasn't even a slight delay, which they could easily do, and then the decision to not, the first sign of death, beep, literally press the button, go to another live stream.
Exactly. I mean, if they'd have finished that sentence, death, with two Muslims or two gay people, I think they would have pressed the button pretty damn quick. But I mean, I rue the day that I heard the word Kneecap, let alone the word Bob Vylan. I wish I'd never heard those two words together. But yeah, I mean, the weird thing is that the BBC put all this time and effort into agonising about whether they were going to broadcast Kneecap, and decided that they weren't. So they made, I guess, the right decision then. But it took them a lot of cerebral engagement. Their heart wasn't telling them, look, we just can't go there at all. Yeah. They had to think it through for a long.
We'll get in trouble. But this is the thing. That they should have been flagged up, and this idea that these weren't political people. I'm sorry, you're at that level at the BBC or making those decisions. Forget Tim Davie, everyone else down on serious six-figure salaries. You are capable of making that decision.
Exactly,
and as you say, if it was different group that were being targeted, and that's the key thing, because we need to stress this in terms of the idea. Look, people can hate the state of Israel. They can hate the Israeli government, they can hate the policies, they can dislike what's happening in Gaza, West Bank. They're perfectly entitled to those views and to voice those views. And I would encourage people, if they have those views, to voice those views. I'd rather know what people think. Some of those views are very, very legitimate, I would say, and they certainly shouldn't be criminalised. But when you talk about the idea of death, I don't think anyone on stage should be shouting death to anybody, whether they agree with them or not. But crucially also, the IDF, the Israeli Defence Force, is a conscripted force. So you're talking about, includes, 18, 19-year-olds, just left school, who are fighting in that fighting force. You're talking basically about the death to pretty much everyone in Israel at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what was going on in Bob Vylan's head, if anything. But that chant, I mean, death to the IDF, it feels to me as if, people can't say death to the Jews. And so there are many other things you can say. Zionists. You can criticise Zionists in a way that you can't criticise Jews. You can criticise Netanyahu in a way you can't criticise Jews. You can criticise the Israeli government, and everyone nods sagely and says, oh, yes, they're terrible, they are genocidal. people, but you can't say the same thing about Jews. So it often becomes code. And when this chant "death, death" to the IDF is becoming used widely actually by other activists as well now, not just Bob Vylan, I fear that it's becoming a code for basically what people feel is death to the Jews, but they're not allowed to say it. And so they say death to the IDF, and they have plausible deniability. Oh, I was only talking about geopolitics. I was only talking about the combatants and soldiers and so on. And actually, what they really feel in their souls is something much darker.
Certainly, from conversations I've had with people in real life and on social media, the word Zionist is now just used interchangeably. I've got messages people about the Zionist Israeli state. You're thinking, yeah, I mean, by definition, so I think we know they're using the word Zionist as replaced for Jewish. That's what they mean. But it was interesting when Bob Vylan the singer Bobby with a Y, Vylan, as opposed to the drummer Bobby with an IE, Vylan of Bob Vylan. I know it's complicated. They've been dropped by the United Talent Agency and MDDN. Basically said we don't want anything to do with you anymore. They're also facing police investigation. Whether or not the police will decide that this crosses the line into criminality, I mean, I think they largely make the wrong decisions a lot of the time. But I don't know how on earth Lucy Connolly could have been prosecuted and Bobby Vylan wouldn't be. But he didn't just talk about death to the IDF. He said free Palestine, from the river to the sea. From the river to the sea is a chant that clearly means from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean. By the way, most people chanting it don't realise that it does mean that. That means the wiping out of the state of Israel. But he also talked about how he used to work for a effing Zionist. And he went on and on, kept saying that. I mean, again, I don't think there was any question mark about his views on Israel, his views on Jewish people. The question is, though, should they be prosecuted? They've lost their visas for the United States. They say, we don't want you in our country if they're tall. So, oops, that didn't work out so well, did it? Is that, though, a form of censorship of freedom of speech? Should they be criminalised? Should he be criminalised for saying those words?
Well, personally, I feel that there's too much policing of free speech in this country, of offensive speech overall. You can't have, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. You can't have people like Lucy Connolly being banged up and yet men like Bob Vylan free to call death to the IDF and receiving no implications whatsoever, no repercussions whatsoever. So if you're going to start policing free speech, which I don't think you should do it across the board fairly, without fear or favour. Yeah. But I do think that the broader point is that what's more worrying is not so much that he said it, but the fact that thousands of people chanted along with him. Yes. And let's not forget that it's not just his attitude towards Israelis and Jews, although that's bad enough, frankly. It's also his attitude towards us, towards the British state. He's said any number of horrendously offensive.
You want your country back. You effing can't have your country back.
Exactly. So
I mean, he's British.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a man who should have ever left his mother's garage, and yet he's on the stage at Glastonbury, chanting to thousands, and thousands are singing along with him and loving him up, and the BBC love it too. That's the thing. So I think, aside from the legality of it, it just says some very dark things about the moral fibre of our country right now. That
absolutely.
This is so popular.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, not really supportive. Now, I've mentioned on air yesterday, I had a conversation with a very senior figure at the BBC a week or so ago, where I said I believed that the BBC was institutionally racist against Jews. Anti-Semitic, and it was so ingrained now, not that individual people were individually hating Jews, it was so ingrained they didn't even see it. It was just embedded in everything that they did in terms of their coverage of Israel, their judgments, the way they cover the crimes and things. They just simply can't see it. This very senior figure at the BBC, very senior figure at the BBC, was absolutely outraged at this. Absolutely outraged. We had quite a set to about this issue. I'm kind of the view that what happened at the weekend epitomised my point exactly, is that they didn't even realise, because it's so institutionally anti-Semitic, they didn't realise that these chants, this behaviour, this act was inappropriate to be broadcast on a national broadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a fish not seeing the water because it swims in it. It's everywhere. And, I had a conversation with Tim Davie a while back, actually. I bumped into him and had a conversation about this. And his defences seem to be, I hope I'm not misrepresenting these, but they seem to be two main arguments. One is that we also get criticised from the Islamist side, from the Muslim side. So therefore, we're doing a pretty good job of being balanced. But the problem is that one side is right and the other side is wrong. So splitting the difference.
Well, no, it's not a question. It's like, is there evidence? the key thing is, I mean, again, it's not who's saying it. What evidence does one have for?
Yes, one side is evidence-based and
one is not.
The other side is
do you think Tim Davie will go? Do you think this question about the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy sounded jolly furious in the House of Commons last night? The fact that he was there at the scene, and loads of senior figures be there at the scene, no doubt paid for by us. If you weren't working, I hope I wasn't paying for your trip down there, Tim Davie. But do you think he will go, and do you think he should go?
Well, I think that, you know, put it this way, I think if you would exchange the word Israel and Jews for Muslims and transgender people, and then rerun history from October the 7th until the present, he wouldn't be in a job today. In fact, he probably wouldn't have been in the job by the end of October 2023. I think that says everything that you need to know about whether he should be in his job right now or not.
Very interesting. Jake Wallis Simons, author of Israelophobia. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, I mean, do you think he will go, Tim Davie, the director of the BBC? Do you think he should go? Should it look, he may have been at Glastonbury. Let's face it, he's not the man pressing the button, sitting there. Someone's job it is, as a director, someone to say, cut that feed. Someone made a decision to, at Glastonbury, to put that band on. Someone made the decision at BBC to live stream it. He's not taking those micro decisions. He's the Director General.
And it's one of those things where obviously the buck ultimately stops with him. I mean, if you look at some of the reporting around this, he's taken, if anything, a much more active role in editorial decisions than a Director General would usually be expected to do so. In a way,
that's an understanding that he doesn't trust the people he's got.
It's a sign of failure, and also it's the sort of thing where he's not necessarily the best equipped person to make those calls, as the call that was made on Saturday probably indicates. But I think even if heads do roll in this situation, we all know that's not going to change it. The problem is not necessarily Tim Davie ultimately, it's the fact that, as Jake was talking about there, some form of Israelophobia is the water that a lot of people, not just at the BBC, but in the liberal left media more broadly, swim in. They can't see it when even quite outright Jew hatred is staring them in the face, and that's something which needs to be tackled. If stronger leadership is required to tackle it, then so be it. But let's not pretend this is all coming down to one person making
no, exactly. But again, as Jake Wallis Simons points out, there is this point. If you say it's not very different, if it was about trans people, if it was about Muslims or black people, any of these statements, they would instantly go no. We've had, look, good to see, people have had, 6 cops turn up at their door because of a tweet they've written that, trans women aren't women, and refusing to use the incorrect pronouns, preferred pronouns for somebody, because that's such an offence. But they don't think it's an issue for someone to talk about effing Zionists. And again, I do think, Jake is right, I do think people now criticise Israel, Zionism, and it is basically code for Jew. That's what it is. It's code for Jew.
And it's been this way a long time before October the 7th as well. Anyone who was paying attention knew that there was this bubbling anti-Semitism. The fact that Jews, even before October the 7th, made up a tiny proportion of the population, less than 1%, and a quarter of all religiously motivated hate crimes. The fact that if you looked, you would see stories all the time about Jewish cemeteries being desecrated, swastikas being put on gravestones. This is something that's been going on in the background for a very long time. What's happened post-October the 7th is it's burst out into the front, even at Glastonbury.
And we've imported a lot of it because sorry to break it to you on the left, but an awful lot of people who come from the Muslim Arab world are incredibly anti-Semitic. It is absolutely rife across large swathes of the world. We've imported a lot of it, and then we've seen the allyship between the sort of Muslim people, largely brown people in this country, victims by the left, and therefore globalists. US supported Israel, bad. I mean, there's just been this idea somehow, this meeting of the far left and blatant, Islamist-led Jewish, anti-Semitism. They've come together. Yeah. I mean, seamlessly, and we've been watching it happen. And again, Jeremy Corbyn, thanks, mate. One of the reasons why he's not Prime Minister of this country is because of those horrific views that he was perpetrating, and his supporters.
The so-called anti-racist. This is the most
so-called anti-racist,
extreme, violent upsurge of racism, certainly in my lifetime, probably in many people's lifetimes. And yet they've been not only nowhere to be seen, they've been making excuses for it or engaging in it.
Engaging in it mostly, yeah.